Yeah, well, I'm Benjamin Harris, owner and operator of Sinking Creek Horse Logging. Horse logging is just an alternative method to using large machinery to harvest wood. Just get raw material out of the forest. And a lot of people like the approach on property they own because it's lower impact. And just it doesn't require most of the time big bulldoze road to get equipment in. Much smaller. We call it like the footprint, just kind of the overall impact on the piece of wood's being harvested.
Okay, great. How did you get involved in horse logging?
Well, we had horses on the farm growing up, and I through the community of the draft horse community, I met a fellow in Floyd who does an apprenticeship program, teaches horse logging, and then so I did that about 11 years ago, and then since then I've traveled around the country and worked with a number of different people.
Okay, great.
But
And so, how long have you been doing this now?
11 years now.
11 years, okay, great. And what areas other than Virginia, you were in Salem, Virginia today, what other areas have you done this in before arriving here?
I've logged in Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Wyoming, and Montana.
Okay, great. What brought you to Virginia?
I'm from Virginia originally. I grew up in Craig County.
Okay,
Yep,
great.
north of Roanoke County.
What do you enjoy most about what you do?
Well, I'd say probably what I enjoy most is kind of I just like being outside. I like being out in the woods, especially. I grew up in the country. I just grew up in the woods playing, and of course I like working the horses. You definitely have to like it. It's a lot of work, using horses over machinery, but I definitely like it. The horses just have they each have their own personality, and it's just like the two horses that I use primarily. I raised them from babies, so there's just a sense of satisfaction, taking an animal, from day one, and now I'm making a living with them, and yeah, it's just enjoyable.
Right. So you have two horses that you?
I have four that I work. Yeah, I use pretty much all four of them most every day, but the two of them are kind of they're my biggest team. Yeah, they
Okay.
do the
They
most
have
work.
names?
Yeah, Tug and Trace. It's two names for one piece of the harness. It's kind of the main piece that they pull with. You can either call it a tug or a trace.
Okay.
So that's the two. Their mother was a logging horse as well. The two that I raised, I had her. She was actually the first horse one of the first two horses I used. And I just remember when they were babies, they'd just big enough, just walking, and they'd just, their mom would be pulling a log down the trail, and they'd be hopping along behind her, and they've just been around it their whole lives, and they're just so, especially when they're young, they're so funny and curious about everything, just the logs and horses, the trees and everything that's going on.
Sure. Great. Can you tell us a little bit more about how horse logging benefits the woods compared to other forms of logging in a little more detail?
Yeah, so horse logging is a good alternative for a lot of people because well, there's several things. One, they're just a lot smaller, obviously, than a big machine. So that allows just for them to pass through the woods requires a smaller trail, and that's just kind of the beginning. I can use one horse, and it only requires a spot about 2 feet wide. That's a big machine might take 8 or 10 feet or more. If I use two of them, it might take 5 feet. But that's just kind of the beginning. Then they're just really kind of ultimately maneuverable, and that kind of brings us to one of the main points is that horses. It's not just horses by themselves that are good. It's the type of management forest management that horses go best with, that kind of makes it even better. And that is that in a lot of ways the trees that we're leaving are more important than what we're taking. You know, every site is different as far as what the landowner wants to do, but usually they use us because in some degree they're concerned about the trees they're leaving. They want to, you know, leave them healthy and strong and with no defects. And the horses are just kind of really the best overland way, you know, on the ground way to do that, because they're just so maneuverable. I'm usually going to be pulling a shorter piece of wood. You know, they obviously don't have as much power as a big machine, and so I'm going to be pulling a smaller piece of wood, which means I'm less likely to rub the bark off of trees, and which is a serious problem on any site logged with big equipment. Is tear the bark off the trees, come back in a couple of years, and that's rot and disease worked its way up, and that tree might as well have been, you know, it's just useless now. So, you know, it's the management and that the horses allows us to do. You could sort of use one little term to sort of define what the horses do best, and that would be worst first. In other words, when we go into a patch of woods, we're looking at what trees are the worst. Like, we think of trees sort of like stocks. If they're increasing in value, we want to leave them. If they're topping out or starting, obviously you want to catch them right before they start to drop. Then it's time to take them. And that's kind of our mindset in general when we go into a piece of woods, because we want to. The forest is there. You know, the forest doesn't need us, but we do need the forest, so we got to take care of it. You know, but we also need the forest for the wood we can get from it, but we also need it just as a forest, because forests do all kinds of things that we know about, and probably lots of stuff we don't know about. And cooling water they filter water, and that's like one of the most important things they do that we know about, you know. But there is just the whole ecosystem. So the whole idea is that we can keep the forest as a forest while creating it like a continuous, sustainable supply from it, and the horses just allow us to do that, you know.